I think we're live.
I think we are live. Welcome everybody to Cracking the Rich Code Show. I'm your host, Pete Beskis. And actually, I'm going to I'm going to just do a quick swap over. There we go. Wrong podcast, right? This is what we do. This is what happens when you go live, right? Sometimes you forget. So welcome to Cracking the Rich Code. I'm your host, Pete Beskis. Today with us, we have one of our co-authors, Sue Bodine. Sue Bodine is a coach who helps businesses, coaches in their business using a multitude of different experiences and techniques. You're trained at NLP, you have a master's in business administration. So you've got the gambit, you have all this experience. I want to welcome you to the show. Welcome for being on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Sue,
I'm
you're one of our contributors in the most recent one that's coming out, chapter 14 of Cracking the Rich Code. And your chapter is called How to Be Your Own Financial Architect, Building Generational Wealth. So I'd like to know a little bit more about why you picked that topic and how it kind of plays into the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we probably don't have a lot of time, but I'm gonna
With
shorten
lots
it
of time,
down.
don't worry about it. You take your time. There's no rush.
Yes, yes. So in short, basically, I come from a different country, right? I didn't grow up here in the United States. I grew up in Istanbul. Came here when I was like 18, but my early years was very challenging. I had a alcoholic dad, and from that experiences, I took that, and it showed up for me every area of life as I grew up. I got older, and ultimately, I struggled with my personal life, with my financial goals, with businesses I started, and even worked in corporate. I struggled with relationships, building relationships. I had a chronic self-doubt that really stopped me from showing up as, who really am for my business, for leader that I was in the corporate world. So the reason why I chose that topic is because I know that how painful it is to seems like you're doing everything that you can get out of the hole that you're in financially. And we make it sometimes complicated too, but I figured it out, and I wanted to get the word out to others that I see you, I feel you. Financial struggle is real, and there's hope, and there's a way that you can actually overcome those obstacles that you have. So that's why I wrote that.
I love that story. If you don't mind, I'd like to dive a little bit deeper. You mentioned, moving from Turkey to, from Ismail to the US, having an alcoholic parent. What kind of self-doubt did that create for you that was kind of the lasting legacy in that early phase of your life?
Oh, goodness. So I left home, and, I was on my own. I came here, I tried to make a life for myself. And I tried to get a job, and, I was doing all the right things. I went to school, I got my bachelor's, and then I later on got my MBA. And I didn't really have anybody to go to and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. What do you think? What should I do? All those little decisions that I was making, which later on I've realized that was those decisions were making with the lens that I had. The lens, when I say lens, that means that we all have, as human beings, we have psychology, right? We grow up with certain values, we grow up with certain beliefs. And if you don't understand those kind of beliefs and value system that we have growing up, we don't understand how that's showing up for us in our lives. It can get in the way of really achieving our goals and really reaching our full potential to show up how we want to show up as a human being and mom and wife and, business owner or whoever, like we're trying to accomplish in our lives. So having those limiting beliefs and values about money, about relationships, all of those things really stopped me from achieving what I wanted to achieve.
That I'm going to keep diving a little bit deeper on this because I'm fascinated with what our underlying kind of that one or two things that we say to ourselves over and over again that hold us back. I know for me personally, I've done a lot of work to uncover those things, right? To see, okay, who's in the passenger seat with me? Who's on my mental board of directors, right? That's how I kind of reference it. It's like who's sitting there at the table.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think when I did some of those NLP works, and that's why I'm very curious to see from your perspective, some of the things that come out are they're only a couple of phrases like you're alone, or you have to do this alone, or I think John Gary Bishop calls them like the three saboteurs. Like, what are the three kind of thoughts that you keep having? Which is, I have to do this myself. That was mine. That was my personal one. What did you come up with from your journey that was your saboteur, your underlying limiting belief?
Yeah, that's actually, I appreciate that because I wrote it in my chapter exactly how that happened. So I really go into deep into it. So go read the chapter, you'll find out. But in essence, um, so struggled most of my life trying to get out of the hole, all the debt, right? I got married, we got into more debt, trying to do different things. We even tried to Robert Kiyosaki's program back in the day. I'm talking about 20 years ago now, I think. Yeah, about that. Didn't really work for us. We had the tools, but we didn't have the mindset around it. We didn't have the understanding that we have later on. We, got into more in depth of working on ourselves and understood what happened there. So, but the trigger for me was really having a transformation happen to me when there's a specific way to release these limiting beliefs and emotions that we have, because every experience that we have, we store it in our subconscious, and it's stored with a specific emotion. So it's not just beliefs, but also emotions. So when I had my breakthrough, like I said, there's a specific process around that I do with my clients now. I teach it, I apply it with my coaching because it was a game changer. I released all of that. I released all that limiting belief. And for me, I'm going to get to that point where you're saying, what was it for you? It was for me, I'm not worthy. I am not worthy came up. And, but like I said, it wasn't just, oh, this is my limiting belief. Yes, that was very like a catalyst to figure that out and releasing that. But also, we carry those emotions that attach to those experiences that we have. And our subconscious mind is not linear. So it's not like you can say, oh, dog bit me when I was young, so I don't like dogs. Well, your subconscious mind now deposited that experience with everything that happened when that dog bit you. So everything attached to that, the sun and the grass and everything that happened, somebody yelled, all of those things later on, it adds up. All those emotions stack up. And that's how we get into triggers, right? You get triggered about certain things. So the reason why I'm emphasizing that is because a lot of times I think in this space, let's say, coaching space, we talk about limiting beliefs, but I think that for me, at least, knowing the differentiator would be that understanding those emotions that attach to our experiences and combining the two. And when you release that baggage altogether, it makes the world of this difference.
I think I really like how you frame that it's the feeling that gets triggered because of that belief. And, I know your chapter's on money, and I think money for a lot of people, I think a lot of the people out there who are coaching on money or speaking on money, they try to make it neutral. They try to make it the numbers, like, and I'm an engineer by trade. So like my mindset is always the numbers don't lie. But when it comes to money, there is an emotional trigger. Money isn't just numbers for almost everybody. Money is a trigger. And there, a lot of the stuff, a lot of those limiting beliefs and those, yes, you can see them. And I've been through the journey myself where you look at the belief and you can identify it, but you're like, it doesn't matter if I can see it. It's how I feel about it. And
exactly.
entrenched, and it feels like there are deep roots that are holding on to release. So it's almost like pulling a really strong weed out. There's a lot of resistance to letting go of those.
Yeah.
How do you approach that?
Yeah, so let me start by saying, great point, by the way, in a couple of examples, because I work with coaches. When they come to me, typically, I ask them, okay, what's going on? How I can help you? So, I don't have, enough leads, or I'm not making enough sales. I'm not making enough money. I'm like, okay, great. So then we go deeper when they start working with me. And what I found is that most of us have these like you said, your emotions triggers around money, even though consciously we may be like, oh, yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm just going to focus on the leads. And problem is never the problem, right? There's always something below that. So when we deep dive into it, what I find is that there have associated sales with something they had experienced in the past negatively, whether it's a childhood or adult, doesn't matter. It all stems from 0 to 7 years of age, because we're a sponge. I'm not going to get into too much neuroscience here to bore you, but everything really stems from very early on, what we pick up on. And then we just stack that up as we get older. And we may consciously make decisions, but yet there's subconscious mental blocks that we have that easily can be released. And when we do that, going back to your point about emotions, at that point doesn't trigger. For example, if I come to you, and in which we see that in the market right now, coaches listening to this going to resonate with this. People coming up to you, hey, I can get you leads, I can do this, I can do that. And if you're getting triggered by that, somebody's trying to sell you something. Go back and think, something happened when you were a child. Maybe perhaps as an adult, you experienced something. Maybe somebody was trying to sell you door to door. Maybe somebody come to the house and your dad or mom reacted to that person that's trying to sell. So all of those things that we don't even think about consciously, subconsciously running in the background, and now you're being triggered, right? Somebody's trying to sell you something. Guess what? We're all trying to sell something, right? We're trying to help people. To me, selling a service, reframe, right? So if you're not looking at it that way, and somebody's coming up to you and saying, hey, why don't, can you buy this program? It's going to help you. You get triggered. Then I would encourage those that listening to this, download my chapter, get in touch with me. Let's talk about it, because there's definitely something subconsciously that going on.
Well, and that's interesting you say that, because one of the things that I can draw even from personal experience is, there's a couple of things I was instilled in. My parents are immigrants as well. So we had that money scarcity growing up, and the idea of you have to work harder to make more money. And it was like that parallel. So some of these beliefs and lessons that go, and then you see the people who are truly wealthy and have that generational wealth, they've disassociated that concept of my effort produces my result, right? It's a different kind of concept versus the result is what you get valued on. But what's also interesting is when you mentioned the whole people who come to sell to you. Well, I'm also a child of the 80s, so I remember door-to-door salesmen, and I remember people coming to your house, and there is this feeling of invading your personal space. And I think it even goes a little bit beyond just someone's trying to sell you something. It's someone's getting into your personal space that you don't know. And there's a visceral reaction to that. There's an invader at the door. And I think that for some of us, who grew up with this, weren't as involved in the community, and I'm sure you can relate to that being an immigrant as well. It's like you are seen as a stranger, and the people outside are strangers. And that's a limiting belief, because, you have much more of a visceral response to somebody at your door who you don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And that
absolutely.
we like to think of it as like, oh, someone's trying to sell me. But I think it even goes one step deeper than that. It's, I don't know you. Who are you, and why are you contacting me?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And, if I hadn't worked on my, limiting beliefs and emotions, I would have easily tell you back then that, oh, people, like I had leadership roles in corporate world. And I mentioned we started some businesses on the side. It's a side hustle. And I always looked at those experiences back then. I was like, oh, this is not working, or I'm, not getting where I want to get to financially. And I was like, okay, well, to your point, like I am not from here. It's my accent or the way I talk or the way I look or, like trying to find this like, oh, I'm different. That's
Mhm.
why, people are not, coming to me or being part of the program that I have, or I'm not able to speak in a way that I can, communicate the value of what I'm trying to do. So all of those inner dialogues that going on at that time was all based on subconsciously I'm believing, oh my God, like I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the reason. Yeah.
It's also my brain is now kind of going down some of those things that you're saying. It's like, okay, when somebody reaches out to me, what triggers me and how I evolved, to look at it. I
Yeah.
think now I come from it. I'm always trying to go from a place of curiosity, whereas before it was, very much,
Like,
fear
why are you
based.
talking to me?
Why are you talking to me? Whereas it's interesting now because
Yeah.
I'm like, if I'm triggered by something that you've written to me, I start to think to myself, how would I do it differently if I'm going to reach out to somebody, if I'm going to go so that I'm
Yeah.
not invading space, so I'm not creating that trigger for people. So I am more inviting, more, approachable, like, and then it gets me thinking in a constructive way versus a, kind of a fearful, retracting type way. So it is
Exactly.
interesting how you're mentioning all this and all this stuff's coming up in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, I totally see all of that. Like,
Yeah, yeah. And we all have them. It's, it's a human experience, I
Mhm.
call it, right? We are born whole, we're perfect. And then, some happens as we're growing up. We all have our own traumas, things that happen to us. And, the reason why I love so much working with coaches because I'm really passionate about changing that. Because I live my life, most of my life, just not knowing that. Even
Yeah.
knowing that changes things, knowing that it's not your fault. We are all experiencing something. We have this beautiful brain and mind, and we have not given instructions how to use it.
Mhm.
Right? You go to school, they don't tell you how to, work on your mind, work on your money, and how to make money and keep it and grow it and be wealthy. They don't teach you that stuff.
Let
So,
me ask you a question then,
yeah,
because now you
yeah,
kind of jumped into a thing I love to debate about. It's the idea
okay.
of when we go to school, like what do you come out, what tools do you come out of school with? But it's the lessons you learn by implementing those things. You
Hmm.
have an MBA, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
What did that teach you about money? That's okay.
Teach me
That's a
that
good.
I got into debt more. That's basically. I mean, they were. Don't take me wrong. There were some good things in there. Like I did my final projects on leadership and things
Mhm.
like that. I think that's one of the reasons why I looked at it. I go, okay, this is how leadership's supposed to work, and I'm in a leadership role, but yet it doesn't work like that in real life. Like, why are you teaching me this in school? Like,
Yeah.
teach me what real life is like, right? And money in terms of like, masters in business, I could, I did masterminds. I learned from masterminds a lot more how to manage, how to grow a business, what to do, how to market myself than I did any class in MBA. Like that, there's no comparison. MBA was just, I think, at the time, like I said, I did not know. I would not advise anyone to go to school. Get in a mastermind, learn from someone that is already doing what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think this is something that I'm very passionate about myself, because I love to coach people in the career space. Taking different avenues and making those career decisions, right? And it's very interesting to me when people follow the path that was set out in front of them. Go to school, get your MBA, go into you become a leader. What does that even mean, right? I've also, as an entrepreneur, seen that there are trial and errors that you only learn through experience and through going face to face with those limiting beliefs and going face to face with that obstacle that's holding you back. And you nothing's going to ever, there's no school for that. That's the
And
school of hard
it's
knocks, right?
yeah, and it's interesting because like I said, it's our value, right? We pick up from our parents
Hmm.
or people that we model when we're really young. And the reason why I'm saying that is because that's what we do, because that's how our brain works. And that's what I did. I was like, oh, my dad was like, you're going to go to school. That's success. If you go to school, you get a degree, you're set, you're good, you're successful, you have a status, you have. So these are all values, right? We create this kind of system, value system, that the path that I took, exactly what I thought that I should do because of my dad, because of my, values that I inherited from my dad. Because at that point, like I mentioned, 0 to 7 years of age, we don't have a filter. We don't have of saying, oh, is this true or not? If somebody says, oh, you're not good enough, boom. I was like, okay, I'm not good enough. Right. So we don't have a filter. So all those values that I developed when I was young, I just followed that path. And there was nobody, obviously, for me to pull me back. Nobody to tell me that. And tell me differently that, hey, you can do things differently. You don't have to go to school. Look at this. You can do it differently. So that's why I am really passionate about getting the word out there and really understanding that our own limitations really not are our fault, but it also, we have to be able to make a decision to say, okay, what is it that not working for me? Is it subconscious? Because if we can't make that differentiation about what we believe, what our value system is, this comes up a lot because the top 5 values that you have determines what you do in life, what you achieve in life. If you don't have money, top 5 values you have, right? Then we have to look at, okay, so you have this system. I give you the system to generate leads for you as a coach. We still don't have money. Then what's going on here? Because strategy is strategy, right? Strategies work, but we still have to go back and do our own internal work for it to work.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a really good point. And actually, I was going to just pull back a little bit further and say, like, with those of us who, follow the routine, and this, I think, where I see this happen with almost everybody, right? You get taught what you're taught when you're young. You follow the formula that was laid out in front of you, the path that was laid out in front of you. And then at some point, something either works or doesn't work. And there are a lot of people at the back end of that who believe that they were like sold on a bad idea. For example, like my wife is a dentist, and in her family and her culture too, it's like she's Iranian, and they're like, oh no, the more degrees you pile up, the more successful you'll be. She got into her career and wasn't successful by whatever metric success is, and was very bitter, was very disenfranchised. And I see that with a lot. I was the same way at a certain point. And, I think we all go through that journey. So it's interesting that, we don't get that benefit early on, and that you go through this arc. And it's so important to be able to identify it and work through that. Otherwise, you're going to suffer for a significantly longer period of time than you need to.
Yes. And I've been there. So yes.
Yeah. But then to your point, when you're working with coaches and you're trying to overcome this stuff so they can see the results, how does that look?
Yeah. So when I work with my coaches, I have a system where we define their niche, their avatar, who they're going to work with. I have a system where generates leads for them that makes a no-brainer. So they create this ecosystem where they're tapping into their prospects all the time. They have a touch point with them. We develop their irresistible program offer. But messaging is so important. I'm really good with messaging. So we create branding and messaging that really resonates with their prospects and their audience. And I think that, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of times we feel that, okay, the program can do so much. If we don't have underlying kind of awareness of what's going on mentally, emotionally, it may take us a lot longer, like you said, right? We're gonna go through the process, but it's gonna be like pulling teeth. Yeah. So what I do is we go through the limiting belief breakthrough session. We release all of that, emotions, Buffett says, right? If you can't control your emotions, you can't control your money. And I install new ones so that you are in the best mental and emotional state you've ever been as a human being. And at that point, it's just like, limitless. We're just like rock and rolling and really getting leads, making sales, and scaling from there.
So what would you say then is, say, maybe the one or two biggest mistakes people are making when they're striking out, or not just mistakes, but maybe common fallacies that they have?
In terms of coaches or entrepreneurs,
I would say that early phase entrepreneur, like, I know I fell victim to this early on as well. It's like I'm just going to go buy more programs. And again, I'm working in a container that's more strategy or tactics, which I'm very good at myself. And what I needed was support on for me, a mastermind is always the benefit. I love masterminds. I love collaborating with other entrepreneurs who have been there, and
mhm,
then kind of coupling that with a coach. But, the tactics I was sold on early because I'm like, oh, it's the tactics that are going to sell things,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So what
yeah.
would you see from your experience? I know that's my experience, but what would you see from your experience would be like the couple of the mistakes people do early on?
Yeah, and it's a loaded question, but I'll distill it to maybe one or two that comes up most. I think that we have, we're in a market now. We can just see that other people are getting certain results, doing different things. We think that if we do more, we can get closer to our goals, but it's the opposite. It's not that doing more, it's doing less, but doing the right thing. So, for example, I talk to many coaches, they come to me and they have a really like chip on their shoulder. I tried podcasts, I tried this, I tried that. That didn't work. This didn't work. Da, 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 da. We go through that. I'm like, I feel your pain because I've done it myself. When I first started, it was painful. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because I know the pain. I don't want that for somebody else. So, so I would say that really focus on your own skill set and know that if we don't have a way of getting clients, we don't have a business. So what is that skill set I need to develop? What skill sets that I already have that I can maximize and leverage? And what skill set that's going to get me closer to my goal? Focus on that. Because, like, for example, a podcast is awesome. I love it. We're on a podcast right now, but um, it's a long game. So if what is your goal, right? Your goal is to get your 10K a month, then the fastest way to get to that goal is to create conversations with your ideal clients, and really learn how to um, message your value, your positioning in the market, what makes you different. So focus on those things to get your clients, start making 5, 10K a month, then we're ready to do a podcast at that point.
Yeah.
But because that's the goal, right? But if your
Yeah.
goal is to just get the word out, you just want to do different things, you can explore. But most of us, we want to make sure that we have financial freedom and stability in our lives. So if that's the goal, then do less, focus on what you can do, leverage, and what you need to learn in order to create conversations and leads, clients right away.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing advice for a lot of people listening. I'll add in my 2 cents to that, which I always believe in early on, especially in and this is any business, and it doesn't matter if you're in your career or if you're in a brick and mortar or if you're an online person. It's like the number of conversations that you have to have early on. Like it's almost like a lot of us are afraid to go out there and speak and say, hey, this is what I do. This is how I solve problems, right? Because that's all we're doing is solving people's problems. And those early years, those early few months, even, we
Mhm.
sit behind a computer and we strategize and we come up with all these different things that we're going to do, and then we get overwhelmed. And when the reality is, it's just a relationship business. Whether like I said, if you have a brick and mortar, say you're a pizza shop, right? It's about the relationship of your community. How are you getting out there and getting the word out? If you're a coach, how are you going and talking to the people that you want to coach, right? Like if you're in a career mode, who are you talking to help develop your next phase, like to get to that next leadership level, right? People get sold the bill of goods because they're like, if I just buy this, that will create the result. And no, the result is in this: the conversations, the networks, the masterminds you put yourself in, the circles you expose yourself to. So I would always say to anybody starting out, it's like, go have as many conversations as you possibly can, and don't even worry about the other stuff.
Yeah. And, I would add to that, great point. You can do so much, and you can focus on the right strategy, getting the right mentor, mastermind. But if you don't um, address your money blocks, your beliefs about sales and money, and if you're getting icky, if you're getting triggered, you need to address those, because I have many coaches I'm working with. They're like, Sue, I have an issue. I don't even like, I have an issue being seen. Like, I can't even show up in a way that I'm authentic. I'm like, okay, let's explore that a little bit more. And it all goes back to our, limiting beliefs subconsciously, how these programming's running in the background and stopping us from showing up, which I know from a personal experience. So I'm like, okay, let's do the breakthrough session. And now they're like absolutely showing up 100%, no worries. Now we've eliminated anything about money, sales, and they can really be themselves and do the business. Because if you don't address that, then again, it's going to be a rocky road
No,
going
and I
forward.
agree with
So
you 100%. Like, I think you do need to have that community that you can touch base, that peers that are going through the same thing you're going through, but then you need someone you can talk to that
yeah.
will actually reflect back and push you to go to that icky spot that you're avoiding to go to, because we don't do that on
Yeah.
our own. Like, I have a network of thousands of coaches, and we all have the same problem. We're really good at solving other people's problems, and we're really bad at solving ours.
What's the saying? The eyeball can't see itself, right? Eyeball
That's
can't see
right.
itself.
That's right. Right. Looking in the mirror is really,
Yeah.
really challenging. And I think that's
Yeah.
where a lot of us struggle, is that we have also some of those other beliefs that get instilled that, oh, we're helping other people. How come we can't help ourselves? Well,
Yeah.
that's okay. It's okay to not be able to help yourself. That's what, if you're bought into this, you go get help, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is it. And that's why I believe that's so valuable to have, the opportunities to see different people, to hear different voices, because that's where you're going to find some solutions, right? And it's not going to be
Yeah.
in the fancy program. It's going to be in the deep work, in that, rolling your sleeves up and getting messy.
Yes, yes. Life is messy.
Life is messy. And if you've been around,
But that's what makes it beautiful, right? Messy
that's
is
right.
beautiful.
In today's
Yeah.
mastermind, it was funny because I think John Verico said, it's like, if you live long enough, you'll go through every phase of life. And it's true,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you live
Yeah.
long enough, you're going to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. So
Exactly.
I want to pivot a little bit and just ask, how did you get into the Rich Code Club, like with the mastermind with us?
I want to say Jim reached out to me, and I think that's how I found out about it. Yeah, he was just kind of reaching out, and we had a great conversation. And I was like, yeah, I'm in.
That's awesome. So, how's your experience been through the process? Like, the book, chapter 14, or volume 14, sorry, is about to hit. It's
Yeah.
coming out, I think, in the next couple of weeks. Um, how's your experience been from that point to, pre-launch?
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. I love the group, great people in the group. And it's a really simple process, easy to follow. And I already had an idea about what I wanted to write. I actually started a couple of chapters for a book that I wanted to write. So it was a great timing. I guess I manifested that. But yeah, it's been a great experience so far.
Yeah, and give me some of your takeaways from, because we're not just the book, we're also the mastermind. And I always find the most value, again, is being part of the now close to 300 authors that have contributed to this series. What are some of your biggest takeaways from being part of the mastermind?
Yeah, I mean, every month we have this meeting. You get to meet other awesome, coaches, authors, speakers. There's a great networking opportunity for us to kind of connect with others, that we can lift each other up. Jim is great. We're always, getting nuggets from great speakers that coming up to our mastermind to give us those little reminders that we all need every once in a while, right? And yeah, and then we have opportunities like this where we can even spread more word out to our potential, audience and people out there that may be looking for solutions. So yeah, it's a really great program.
That's awesome. Well, I just want to take this minute to kind of plug the series. We are, I think, taking authors now for volume 16. I think volume 15 is locked up, so we're looking for volume 16 authors. I know Jim's always canvassing, looking for great thought leaders, great people who can be contributors. So if you're one of those thought leaders, speakers, coaches, or just have something that you really want to get out there in the world, this collaboration is a wonderful place to start. You'd be, you have a lot of support, you have a lot of benefits by joining it. Again, I'm the biggest fan of the series as well as the mastermind. I've been able to collaborate and work now with a lot of other of the members, which has been fantastic, because I think one of the best things, it's almost like, putting together a sword, or,
Yeah.
you put a few more collaborators together, you become so much stronger. You can produce
Yeah.
such a better product. You can serve your clients better. That's what I found. And it helps to, go somewhere where you can be like, oh, I've got a problem with this. Does anyone know anyone? And out of 300 of these thought leaders, there's always somebody. When you're one step away from Tony Robbins, like, the network's pretty significant in my opinion.
Yeah.
So if you're
Yeah.
interested, you can reach out to Jim Britt on LinkedIn or myself directly. My email is pete@beskisconsulting.com. So you can reach out to me directly and I can forward you to the right people. So thank you so much, Sue. Before we kind of wrap up today, is there something that we didn't go over that you definitely would think is an important top point to touch on?
No, I mean, if anybody has any questions about what we spoke about, obviously we did, touched on surface level today. We don't have time to deep dive. I would love to continue the conversation. Those who are listening, I want to send my love to everybody. You got this. There's a hope. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. So keep pushing. And you know how to find me, SueBodine.com, or I'm on pretty much every platform, Sue Bodine, Coach Sue Bodine, and you'll find me.
Yeah, and I
Thank
can't
you.
wait for the chapter to come out, and that way, we can read the nugget that you contributed to this series. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thank you so much for having me, Pete.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
everybody else, we'll see you next time on Cracking the Rich